everyone, you're here again for HebrewInIsrael.net, and as you can see, I'm trying to push out more videos because it's been quite a while since I've done stuff like this. And also I think this more blog setting is easier for me to work with, so this is going to be more or less the format. And as a follow-up for my video about biblical dictionaries and other books that might be useful when you study, and there will be more books that we start talking about grammar books as well at one point. But don't forget that I do offer Hebrew lessons online at your convenience, flexible material, and so on. And if you have any questions, you go to HebrewInIsrael.net. That's where the information is at, or you can contact me at HebrewInIsrael@gmail.com. So this time I want to talk about actual Bibles, actual Tanachim, and which ones I recommend. So this is not going to be about English translations. I don't deal with stuff like that. There are some good English translations there for people who do not have the ability, the time, or the money to learn Hebrew. And there are quite a few good translations out there, specifically the Everett Fox version, the Shoken Tanakh, which I think is one of the better ones I've seen the last couple of years. But here we're going to talk about the actual Hebrew Bible, because people always ask what's a good version of the Hebrew Bible and so on. So first of all, a very important note. There is a thing known as a Chumash, or Chumash as some people call it, if you're more influenced by the Ashkenaz tradition, and there's a Tanakh, and these are two different things. So Chumash, and I happen to have here one from my kids' school, so as you can see, kids. This is a Chumash, and a Chumash looks like this from the inside. This is a classic one. This is one very, very common in synagogues. And as you can see, this is the Torah text. This is known as the Targum Onkelos, which is an Aramaic translation, not really the original Aquilas translation. I personally have a different opinion about this. Sometimes there's a few more other things, and very classically, Rashi, the medieval French commentator, heavily based on Midrashim. And this is what a Chumash is. The word Chumash comes from the word Chamesh, which means 5, dividing the biblical text, the Torah text, to 5 books. Though, by the way, there are Midrashim talking about more like 7, and maybe a little bit more. It depends how you look at it. But the whole idea is that these are books which are designed to have a smaller version, only the Torah itself. In many cases, at the end of each parasha, let me go to one of these, you will have at the end of each parasha the Haftarah, which is the reading portion. For example, this is for Sefer Shmot, for Parashat Shmot. So this is from Isaiah 27, or actually parts of 27, 28, and 29. And there's a commentary on the bottom, but in any case, this is basically what a Chumash is. It's more for a synagogue service. So people ask me about the stone Chumash or anything like that, and these are basic books that are used in a lot of American communities. This specific version you can also find in American synagogues as well, but this is what Israelis would use more around that type. But these are just for synagogue. These are not a Tanakh. These are not a full Bible. So I have 4 Bibles here, which I have at all times in my library, basically in front of me and behind me. And the point here that these are Bibles for mostly for Hebrew readers. A 5th Bible, which I do not have a copy of, so I'll start with that, is the Hebrew Reader's Bible, I think it's called. All these books, by the way, you can get online off of different book vendors from around the world. All of these books are common. You can find them anywhere. But the whole idea is that there are a few Bibles that I would recommend depending on your need. So the first Tanakh that I would recommend here, and this is for people who already know how to read and just need a little bit of an assist to not make mistakes in different places, because there are some vowel points and consonants that you can confuse. And this is the Feldheim Simanim, and this is a bigger version. Actually belongs to a friend that I'm keeping this one for him. I don't really use this one that much. I have a small one. By the way, just to show you, there's also I can't go to a pocket size, but there's a smaller version of this book. And the whole idea is that, first of all, there's a lot of the spacing between the words is pretty good. The whole idea here is that there are certain shapes that they use, certain fonts they used here to differentiate between one consonant and the other. There's a lot of little titles on the side, and if you really see it, which I don't like. There are a few things that there's like ideas that they present there, what the section is about, which sometimes I think is completely wrong from a historical perspective. But it's a very comfortable page to read from. Even though it's white, it doesn't have a white glow to it. So for the eyes, it's actually pretty good. And what they did is they make sure you can differentiate between a dagesh lene and a dagesh folte. This is, again, for people who already know some Hebrew, to differentiate between a shin and a sin, a letter with a dot to the right or a dot to the left on the top. Kamatz katan or kamatz chatuf versus regular kamatz and kamatz o, and then basically this is for readers. This is to make sure that a person who reads doesn't make any mistakes. So I've actually recommended this one for a lot of my students. This, by the way, comes also in a huge version, and Feldheim actually worked out of the United States, so to get a hold of something from them is actually pretty easy, especially if you live in the Western Hemisphere. So this is more for readers, and I find it sometimes very comfortable if necessary. But again, there isn't much to say about each one of these Tanachim, just showing you the types that I know of. This is a Tanakh. The next one is a Tanakh I've been using for a very long time. So as you can see, first it comes in a box, this version, this size. It also comes in a smaller. There's even, I could say, pocket sizes in these cases. In this case, this Tanakh has been with me for, wow, quite a while. I would say probably over 10 years. And this is really the one I use most of the time. Now, the reason I use this one is the way it's actually set. Now, this one has a slightly less spreading of the text, but the font is considered to be a very, very comfortable font for the eyes. So this doesn't give you any assists. This is a Tanakh that's very, very common in the circles I come from, which is more the Dati Leumi and Mizrahi type. And the whole idea is that the people who invented this is known as the Koren Tanakh. You can see this is the front, this is the spine. Again, just going Koren Tanakh, they work out of a lot of different countries, not a problem to get a hold of. What I find very comfortable, though the page is a little busy, so I don't recommend this for beginners, but what's very comfortable is the font. It's very easy to read, it's very easy on the eyes. You usually print it on a cream-colored paper, which makes it much easier to read. But obviously it's a little busy. The pages are kind of thin, so you do turn the page and you can see the back. You can basically see what's going on the next page. But this is a Tanakh that I would recommend for people who want something which is a little bit easier on the eyes. However, very important, this Tanakh is not based necessarily on the Masoretic text. What do I mean by that? They chose variants of the biblical text that came out from what's known as Mikrot Gdolot, which was a printout, I think, from somewhere in the 16th or 17th century, that tried to figure out a version. There was a bit of a problem in Europe, and there were different versions, so someone tried to produce sat down and looked at all the different versions of the Tanakh they had, and they tried to take what's the majority version that exists. But what they did do here is at the end of the book, besides a few maps and things like that, and by the way, this one also has colorful maps in them, so it's also very useful, but again, all in Hebrew, so I don't know how helpful that would be. But what they did is also in the back they gave you the variants. Basically, they show you what's the difference between this Tanakh and say a Keter Aram Tzuva, a Masoretic text. The Feldheim is actually technically based on the Keter, on the Aleppo Codex. So this one again does take a few more points over the other. Okay, now for something a bit more professional, something that's a bit more for more academic type of work, which is this Tanakh. This is known as the Jerusalem, from the Hebrew University. This is known as the Jerusalem Crown Tanakh. And what they did here, first of all, it always comes with a box, except for the smaller version, but the bigger versions come with a box. A book with a companion volume that actually has A lot of interesting notes about the Masoretic text, about the development, and it actually has a Hebrew and English side. So, for example, there's actually an English side here, and I've read through some of it. Very, very interesting. But what's very interesting is what they did here. So, the first thing is this is again a book for people who are more, much better in reading, but want something interesting in their collection. And what they did here is they tried to imitate the Aleppo Codex. So, what they did is, first of all, the font they used, and I hope you can see this, imitates the Aleppo Codex. They put it in very, very short columns. I think the Aleppo Codex has 3. Yeah, so the idea was to try to imitate the Aleppo Codex here. And obviously the Torah part is based on the Yemenite manuscripts because the Torah part was burnt. But what they did here is it's a very comfortable page to read, and the font is very pretty. But again, it can be a little confusing. But what's interesting is you can also see how people wrote, say, around the 10th or 11th century. This is closer to the Aleppo than other versions that exist. And as you can hear, the dog is barking because it's just everyone's on vacation here. So the kids are home as well. And the whole idea here is that they're trying to give you something that will go back to something older. Again, no special features in this one. It's just it's a nice font. It's fun to read, and it's also very accurate. However, you have to be very careful because it is, again, based on the Aleppo Codex. It is not the Aleppo Codex. There is a version that you can buy online, painfully expensive, of a basically a photocopies, basically not photocopies, but facsimiles of the Aleppo Codex. It used to be cheaper. Now they're producing them for like $1,000 a piece or something. I once spoke with them inquiring if I can buy one. It wasn't worth the money. You can look at the Aleppo Codex online. The last Tanakh I want to recommend, and this is basically a scientific Tanakh, is known as the Biblia Hebraica, and this is more for Bible scholars. I don't care for the font. I'm going to be very blunt. The spacing is very good, but I do not care for the font. The font is ugly. I never understood why all these English-speaking and all these German-speaking people decided on this ugly font and maintain this ugly font for no apparent reason. It is based on it's based on the Aleppo Codex, but not exactly. If I remember correctly, this is actually based on a different manuscript. But what they did here, and this is the important part, is all the footnotes and all the notes on the side. They have Masoretic notes. There are versions. This is a scientific version of the Tanakh, one of the best ones that exists. This is the hardback version. This is the biggest version, by the way. And what's very useful is if you want to see other versions of the Tanakh, if it's Dead Sea Scrolls, if it's the Samaritan, if this is the Septuagint or the Vulgata or something, this is your to-go-to Tanakh. I mean, I personally love the Tanakh for the footnotes. I just hate the font. I hate the print itself, though it's very clean. This, by the way, comes in softback and smaller versions as well. But for scientific work, for seeing variants of the Tanakh, this is where you want to go to. Obviously, it's a Hebrew book, so you really start from this side. And very useful, was recommended to me by one of my professors, and I think it is a very, very useful book. But again, for everyday reading, I would just go with this one. I mean, I don't like the font that much, but it's not as bad as others. Either this one or the Kohen. This more as a novelty Tanakh, I would say, more than anything else. But there are loads of Tanakhim out there. There's some versions which are very condensed print, very small print and everything. Just avoid those. Don't strain your eyes. As you can see, I wear glasses. I've been wearing glasses for years. It happened to me because of all the reading, and it used to be very common that Hebrew books were printed with a very small font, very uncomfortable fonts, and it damaged my eyes. So these are recommendations for Tanakhim, which also can protect your eyes, especially if you're an avid reader and you also want to read the Tanakh in Hebrew. So these are 5, I would say, Bibles that I have to recommend, Hebrew Tanakhim. By the way, the first one I mentioned, which is the Hebrew Readers, actually has Hebrew and English and footnotes for basically almost like a dictionary type of thing. So that can be very useful for people who want to begin reading, who already know how to vocalize the Hebrew and want to be able to read something that they can follow, where there's page in front of page that they can actually use. In any case, these are recommendations. Don't forget to visit me at HebrewInIsrael.net. That's the website. Don't forget to like and subscribe to YouTube. And don't forget SoundCloud channel as well. And you can hear children yelling and screaming. It's summer. What can you do? But in any case, HebrewInIsrael@gmail.com, Hebrew in Israel on Facebook. And I'll see you next time. Kol Tov.